This is Brent Richardson, and welcome to the Business Minutia Podcast, where our focus is on the details of business that are often passed over by traditional classes and leadership training. We focus on the stories of real people who have tried, failed, and learned through their experiences and are willing to share their lessons with others. You have any positive memories from college?
We actually have a very interesting that we have a split college, right? We have the junior college, and then we have the four-year university. And my junior college experience was absolutely amazing. Yeah. I was kind of the cream of the crop.
You were the star.
It was pretty insane.
Jamie gave the commencement address at
first
the junior college.
Student ever to give
first student ever
address.
to give the commencement address. You were a rock star there.
Yeah, I mean, on cover of USA Today, it was kind of crazy.
Absolutely. Still got the award and everything.
Yeah. But then when I went into the four-year university, it wasn't as big of a deal. And at that point, I was married and settling in and just trying to coast through.
You were just trying to finish your degree.
I was trying to check the boxes.
Degrees. You got a couple to my one.
Well, that's because it took you so long.
I take the victory lap. But I probably learned more in my last year.
That's right.
Than I did in all the other stuff. That's not to say there's a lot of good things that I learned from my time in college. But the best class I ever took didn't count towards my degree at all.
Right. And it's really weird. I mean, I think that we took longer to get through college than most people, right? But when you stop checking the boxes and are actually taking courses that matter to your humanity and matter to your financial future, then I think those things actually benefited us more than...
Yeah, so we're talking about what we learned from college and what college taught us in a positive light. But reality, we're going to debate and maybe banter a little bit about the education process. I don't know how we can cover this and not talk about it. It's going to filter in because we're very passionate and have strong opinions on education in general. So that's probably where this is going to go.
Well, it's a tough topic for me because I am so passionate about education.
Why are you passionate about education?
I mean, I went through the whole university system and all of that stuff, but I realized the stuff that was left out of the traditional education. And I am...
trying to supplement.
I read 2 books a week. I constantly read. I'm constantly learning. I am passionate about learning everything that I don't know that could benefit my life.
And you want to do the same. And I think having kids with our kids, I think when our kids got into the public school system and we went through that process, I think that's where we probably developed a lot more passion for the topic.
Right. And I mean, to me, I've got no problem with the public school system. I have got zero problem at all. And I think that it is a great way to get an education as long as you're supplementing.
Yeah, and to be clear for listeners, we homeschool our kids, mainly to make it really awkward for you to listen to. Because we train our kids to tell people, if you ever say anything awkward, just tell everybody you're homeschooled. They'll be like, I got it, right?
Well, my main goal is to not raise cookie cutter kids.
Sure.
And when you look back at what public school actually started from, it started from being able to raise kids that can all do the exact same thing. And when you come out of the public school system, everyone has the exact same skills. And that is a fantastic and beautiful thing to be able to accomplish those skills.
Well, here's my beef. Okay, so 2 years of college that I went through, and I don't know that there was anything that I saw or learned the first 2 years. Okay, I went to 4. Actually, I went at the victory lap. I had 5. But the first 2 years, I don't know that I learned anything that I hadn't seen in high school.
Well, you understand, Brent, that they now have those first 2 years of college that you can now get in high school. So basically, by the time you're in 11th and 12th grade, you can say, you know what? I don't want to do this just for high school credit. I want to do this for high school and college credit. I want to check all these boxes at one time.
And maybe the system's improved now. It doesn't feel like it to me, but maybe the system's improved and people are, getting their first 2 years done when they're 15. That also feels broken to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was 15, I was having a good time, not focused on being an engineer. I think when I was 15, I still had this idea that I was going to be the shortstop for the Houston Astros. I had no idea who I was going to be.
Well, and now in 6th grade, they're asking you, who do you want to be?
Oh, come on. Be a sixth grader. Ride a bicycle.
So
play in the mud. Come on.
But in sixth grade, your counselor will sit you down and say, "Hey, Bobby. Hey, Bobby.
I don't understand this.
Do you want to take the really hard classes,
this is ridiculous
or do you want to
to
take
me.
the really easy
I
classes?
don't understand it. I don't agree with it. Anyway, you can see why we homeschool our kids. We didn't get along, or actually, we got along great with the public school system.
Oh, yeah.
But the leaders of the public school system had their kids that were either homeschooled or in private school. So we were like, yeah, okay, I get that. The writing is on the wall. This is not working.
I had done all of this research to be able to pull my kids out of the public school system. All my research, I had all my paperwork in order, and I go up there to withdraw my kids only to find out, oh yeah, the assistant principal and the secretary and the nurse all homeschool their kids.
Yeah, because it's failed them too, right? And
come on.
And we'll get into this when we talk about what college hasn't taught us. But I think when you think about what college has taught me, the first thing I would start with, and it sounds very negative, but it's a fact of life. It taught me that there are hoops that have to be jumped through. There are times when I have to be a dancing bear. Now, what do I mean about dancing? You go to the circus and you see a bear that dances. Do you think that's what that bear wants to do? No, it's been trained in such a way to recognize that if I dance like this, they're going to give me fish or whatever they're going to give me.
Right.
I recognize that there's certain hoops that I have to jump through. And I think people will be listening and say, that sounds like you need to unteach yourself that. No, I think that's life.
Yeah,
I think there's a certain amount of things that have to get done. If you sit around all day going, well, I got to wait for somebody who's good at taking the trash out, you're going to have trash all around you. Take the trash to the corner, man. There's certain things that just have to get done. And there were certain things you learn how to game the system. Okay. This sounds very negative, but you learn how to game the system.
Yeah.
Am I here for pure learning, or am I here to keep my GPA high? Those contradict each other many times.
Well, and I think that even when homeschooling our kids, I have one kid who is clearly not going to be an engineer, just not the path they're going down. And that's fine. But they still have to learn geometry.
Yeah.
They still have to learn algebra.
Sure.
There are still hoops you have to jump through because every other high school kid in the world has to jump through these hoops. Congratulations.
But if those are foundational, why wouldn't they be covered? Okay, now that's an example that is covered in high school.
Yep.
But I saw tons of cases where we're duplicating things at the university level.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And I hated it in high school, and I'm hating it in the university.
And I guess that's the positive of that, of what you learn from college maybe is general concepts, right? There are a lot of general concepts: history, government, the classic 3 R's:
right.
reading, writing, arithmetic, right? So there's some of those things that were covered that were beneficial, right? And I think depending on the university that you're at,
right.
you get a worldview that you weren't used to, right?
Yeah,
so there's some benefit there.
For sure.
You're on your own for the first time in many cases, and you're learning new things there, which, man, maybe the biggest thing that you gain is the sense of community.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So what do I mean by that?
Well, I mean, for me, community was always, growing up in, East Texas, community was always the church. And to be forced into the box of the church and then realize that there are communities out there where we are all trying to strive for the same thing, and it's nothing related to faith. We are all trying to get to the same end goal, which is a diploma, which is a job, which is a whatever.
You're trying to pass thermodynamics or whatever class it is.
Right.
A&P, you would see these hordes of people outside those classes that there was communities associated with each class. That they're trying to get through this, man. They're just trying, which goes back to the jumping through hoops thing. But although some of those courses, there's key stuff that you have to learn that's beneficial. Right. Now, it sounds like I'm saying, okay, you're telling me you don't use any of the electrical engineering concepts at your job? Maybe every once in a while.
Right.
Maybe some on occasion, but really general concepts. I don't think that's my takeaway from what I learned from university.
Right.
Now, maybe you could say, I've heard the analogy of somebody saying just because you can't remember what you ate 2 weeks ago doesn't mean that wasn't important in forming who you are.
Correct.
Okay, that's a valid argument, I think. So there's probably more to it, but looking back at it today, I don't know that I don't use commonly the things the coursework that I took there. There were different kinds of things that I learned and I applied. And I think that sense of community, the sense of camaraderie, the ability to collaborate and work with different kinds of people, which that has a huge effect on how you interface in a work environment.
And they were kinds of people that you didn't necessarily have growing up.
Right.
Right? It's a diversity of people.
Yeah.
So you start realizing that you can work with people of different genders, different races.
Right.
There are all these people that are collaborating together, and you realize, oh, I can't judge a person based on the color of their skin or what gender they are, because they are bringing something to the table that can actually benefit the group.
Which I think has a lot to do with, if I was trying to pick a university, that would be something to think about. The more of a diverse group of folks that are going to be around you, you're going to gain a lot more from
100% agree.
Yeah, and I don't know that was something that I thought about. It certainly
No.
wasn't for me.
No.
Right? Wasn't a focus area. Although it does exist at our alma mater that people think, oh, not in College Station, Texas. Actually, it's quite diverse.
Yeah.
Because of the academics.
Right.
There's so many people that are drawn there from an academic purpose that you're forced to learn other cultures, but not to the extent that I did until I got out of school.
Right.
Getting out of school was very different. All of a sudden you realize, oh, okay, I am culturally ignorant. That's not something that's covered. You won't find a class in engaging with the Vietnam culture or the Japanese culture or your own, because that's always the most difficult.
Right.
You don't recognize it. It's just gospel. It's just how it is. You don't see it as American culture. It's just, well, that's just how things are. Nope, that's American culture, and you don't even know it yet.
Yeah,
and
right.
you won't know it until you enhance your worldview and see a little bit broader picture.
And I think there's something to be said for the not reinventing the wheel. I mean, there are certain things that are already set in place, and I think college taught us, like, for me in liberal arts, it would have been the 5-paragraph essay, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel if you just understand the 5 paragraphs that need to go into an essay. This is what first paragraph covers. This is what second paragraph covers, all the way down. And I'm sure there are things like that in the engineering field as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it teaches you process, right? And I observe this a lot when I get new college grads that I work with. You can tell they can usually execute on basic process. If you say, here's 1, 2, 3, can you mimic that? And that might be unique to in an engineering and technical environment where you're used to learning science and math, which is, here's the formula, now go apply it 30 times and turn that in Friday. You get really good at applying that formula.
Right.
And its nuances, it's got 5 different variations or whatever, right? The word problem tries to trick you this way or that way.
Right.
You get that down real well. My experience is that that's not the kind of stuff that we study. I'm jumping ahead to to every time to what it didn't teach, but my experience has been that that's there's not as much of that as I'd like to see people able to tackle problems that don't have a process to them.
Right, but I think that there is something to learning the process before you tackle the stuff that's outside the
I
process.
100% agree. I don't know that you can tackle nebulous tasks until you've learned the process.
Right. If you don't know how to use a recipe, then going off on your own isn't really going to...
Yeah, which goes back to your reinvent the wheel point, which is valid, I think, is if I said, here, go solve this problem, and then you got 6 months into it and realized, hey, there's this guy named Laplace that created the Laplace transform, and that's how you use this. Why didn't you tell me that to begin with? So there's a lot of people that there's centuries of incredible knowledge that you want to stand on their shoulders. So you got to get that content in some way, you know, and I think university puts it in a way that you can do it in a structured manner and gain a lot from it at the same time. So I think there's a lot of positive that's there. But really, I'm going to go back to it teaches you that there are some hoops you have to jump through. Now, let me circle back to our previous debate where we talk about our own kids' education, right? And it sounds like we're anti-college. I will be pro my kids going to school, to university, once they know this is the thing that I want to do, and there is a certification required.
Right.
That's what I mean by jump through hoops. If you get to a point and you go, I can't be a doctor because I just talked to Cletus down here and he taught me basic brain surgery on a raccoon.
That's right.
That's not going to work, man. That's not going to work at all. I want everybody going through some kind of certification. And what does it need to take 12 years? I don't know. I think here's what I'll say. You'll 20 years from now, we'll be looking back at this, hopefully. And, if I'm still here on this earth, 20 years from now, we'll be looking back.
What are you saying?
And this will trend very differently. I think university will be a rarer thing. I think you'll see a lot more people being self-educated, being online educated, going a different route. And the folks that are going to go to a university are going to be the folks that either just because they want to and mom and dad paid for it and it's part of the tradition, or because they required a certain certification that they couldn't get a job without jumping through those hoops.
Right. So when we were in high school, Brent, you and I it was a duh. Of course you're going to college. Of course. And I think that our generation, everyone who could went to college and then ended up with a degree, some of which ended up paying for themselves and some of them did not, right? But I also realized that when I was in college, there was nothing more annoying to me than the number of women who went to school for an MRS degree.
What is an MRS degree?
That annoyed me to death.
Yeah, me too.
People sent their kids, their girls, to A&M to marry an engineer.
Right.
Your job
Or someone.
is to go and find a
Worst
man
case, a finance major.
who is going to take care of you for the rest of your life.
Bad joke.
And I remember sitting senior year in this honors English class with a young lady who was breaking down in tears.
True story.
She was in tears because she had just finished her 4th year degree, about to walk the stage with a degree, and hadn't gotten married.
What a waste of education, man. Come on.
She was an English major
Now-
who had no desire to teach.
Maybe that was part of her journey, and she just became this amazing person. I don't know. I just think that it would be valuable for you to have an idea of what you want to do before you go off
Who
and do
are
that.
you? Who do you want to be?
Now, some people have the money, and they're just like, I just want to go learn. Cool, man. Tear it up. Go do that. I can't do anything to say. I'm not going
College costs so much more now than it did when you and I were going to school.
It is. It's a lot more expensive. Right. And it's a lot more expensive. And you've got major companies that no longer are requiring those degrees. So when the hoops, you don't have to jump through them anymore. That changes how you start to educate yourself or how people start to educate themselves.
Well, and you and I had the luxury of when we were going through school, it was 5 different degree paths were 5 different majors were the kind of the expectation for people going into college. Now, I mean, you can't really have 5 different majors if you have finished your first 2 years when you're in high school. You probably ought to know what you want to do with the rest of your life by the time you start college.
Yeah.
How many 18-year-olds know what they want to do for the rest of their lives?
And that's why I think having some gap time where you try to learn who you are a little bit, right? Or just go for it and accept the fact that you're going to change majors 5 times.
Well, and there's so much fear associated with a gap year. I know that we have been lectured multiple times by people saying, well, they're just never going to go back to college. I don't care.
That was my fear. I feared that if I didn't go straight to university, that I would just never go and I'd wind up working at a gas station or something, right? That I would just settle.
But if you are fulfilled by that, if that is what you want to do with your life, then do that.
Yeah, and I think that's an irrational fear. Looking back at it, I think that was probably an irrational fear, and I was putting pressure on myself that I did. Again, probably everybody's different. Every person's different. Everybody's psychology and their brain's going to work differently, so you can't say across the board. But in general, my prediction, what I think will happen, you'll see less and less people going to colleges. You're going to see less people doing that because there's less hoops to jump through. There's less reason for them to go do that.
Right.
It'll start to become just for the cases where, I can't get the job I want without that degree. Then you'll go that route.
Yeah, but COVID has taught us that a lot of universities can actually do all of their learning online.
That's right.
You don't have to go to campus.
That's right.
And if you don't have to go to campus out of state, then you're already saving a bunch of money.
Well, we just talked about this in the continuing education podcast. Like for me, I'm learning off Wikipedia as much as I am anything, or from my peers and from my network and things like that, as much as I am anything else.
Now, something that I do think that was great about college is it teaches you how to please a boss.
What do you mean by that?
If I knew that a teacher needed a certain thing to give me an A, right? There are certain teachers that needed there are very specific things that they wanted.
Yeah, you learned how to game the system is what you learned.
Well,
I did.
Yeah.
I learned how to game the system.
Right.
Rate my prof. grade distributions. I very specifically recall having, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I very specifically recall having 2 professor options for a course. And I saw one's grade distribution, I knew for sure I was going to get an A. And another one, there's a good chance probably I'm going to get a C. But I had heard good things about that professor, and I took the chicken route and I went for the A.
And I also learned that if you signed up for one honors class, you got to register early.
Yeah.
One honors class, you got to register early.
Game the system.
So you could drop that one honors class one time. So You would save that one honors early registration that you knew you were going to drop until your last semester. And then you would register for the honors class just to drop it so that you could get the professors you wanted.
You're right, and I'm being pessimistic, and it sounds bad. The reality is you're right. You know, when you're going to get a boss post-college or anybody, you're going to get a boss, and learning to game the system and learning that this is what their care about is.
Yep.
And my care about may be totally different, but I'm going to keep that quiet, and I'm going to focus on the thing that they care about.
Right.
That's a valuable thing to learn.
And when you're in history classes, it was valuable to know, is this a professor that's going to have essays that they're going to want us to actually express our actual opinion on something?
Yep.
Or is it going to be a regurgitation of dates?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And have you ever been in a class where what's your opinion on something, you share it, and you get dinged, and you're like, I'm going to fail
You
if I
don't
share
want my opinion.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay quiet and learn how to beat this.
And in reality, when you're in college, you can decide, I don't want to have that class. I don't want to have that teacher. I don't
Right.
want to have that. When you learn the same thing about your boss, when you're actually hired somewhere, then you know who you want to work for and who you don't.
That's right.
What makes that person happy?
So maybe we spend some time, we beat this horse pretty good. Maybe we talk a little bit about what college didn't teach us.
Oh, I think college taught us everything we needed to know.
We've already hit on a lot of it, but I
Oh.
think there's some key things out there, especially for folks that think about is if you're out there, I don't know, maybe there's folks that are middle of college or debating this or thinking about going to college.
And they're now pulling their hair out.
Debating and wishing they hadn't. I don't know, but let's talk about some of the things that college didn't teach us.
Okay.
Right. And I think the first thing I think about is that they didn't teach you about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. How can you teach anybody that? But that's the first thing I remember dealing with is feeling like I don't belong here.
Well, and in reality, you feel like you are alone in that feeling.
What is imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is if they knew how little I knew, they wouldn't hire me. Right? It's they don't realize that I'm incapable of doing this.
And this ties to, like, I'll jump to one of the other points that college won't teach you and can't, which is there are, now forget company specifics. And like the first thing you think, well, there are very specific company things that you have to learn. Absolutely. There are also very industry specifics. For
Right.
whatever industry you wind up into, whatever job you wind up into, there are industry standards, industry specifics that they're not going to cover that stuff because they've appeal to a broad audience. They're giving you evergreen as much as possible. Evergreen meaning it's going to be good for 20, 30, 40 years, the education that they're giving you. They want it to last much longer than, hey, this will be good for you for about 2 months.
Right.
Right. They're trying to give you things in general concepts, right? So they can't cover, here's the industry standard for 2021. That would be a bad course to teach
Right.
because it's not going to last long for you, right?
Exactly right.
So there's a lot of things that don't get covered. And then what happens is you wind up in this industry, new at this job, and all you see is a wall of 3-letter acronyms that you don't know.
Yep.
And you already don't feel like you belong there.
Yep.
And then that imposter syndrome kicks in hardcore.
Right.
And then it makes it so that you don't ask questions. You get intimidated. You don't ask questions. You don't ask why enough.
Right.
Because you should be asking why until you annoy people.
Right. But I remember you and I both, when we first graduated and we got that first paycheck, and you look at that paycheck and you're like, holy cow.
Well, I went from no money to money. Yeah.
And if I ask questions, are they going to take this away from me because
Right.
they realize?
Yeah. I remember being recruited to get my master's degree. And they were like, we want you to stay and study under. And it was one of the top professors in the
Right.
industry. I probably should have done it. But I was like, they're going to pay me money. And I don't have to go to school.
Right. Right.
Done. You're not competing with these folks. This
Right.
is not something, you're not going to win this fight.
Another thing college doesn't teach you is how to teach yourself.
Yeah, which probably does tie to that. I think when you have that imposter syndrome, you don't ask questions, you don't reach out, you can be intimidated. And I think things are different now versus when we were in college too.
Right.
But like Wikipedia, holy cow, there's a ton of information, right? It neutralizes a lot of that imposter syndrome. You should be doing this on your own. You
Yeah.
should be doing all of that research and learning and learning and learning. I remember the first couple of months on the job when I realized how much of an ocean of things I didn't know. There was so much I didn't know. And immediately I thought, holy cow, my alma mater is awful. to not cover any of this stuff. And I was
No.
fortunate that my mentor was from my alma mater, and he
Right.
goes, they didn't teach me any of that stuff. Nobody's going to teach you that. You just got to learn it.
Right. And there's something about transitioning from the checkbox system of everything, having to check a box to be able to move past a course, as opposed to the true learning of what is necessary in your specific career.
Yeah, which goes back to what we kind of talked about earlier with how we educate the kids, is like you really want to get to as much pure learning as you can. And I can't recall if I mentioned this earlier, but I think the best course I took of all of my time in College Station, the best course I took didn't count towards my degree.
Right.
And it was personal finance. Personal
Life
finance,
changer.
like 101, I think, right? And that was a life changer for me.
Yep.
And I was pretty savvy in the ways of the world in general. I had making my own car payment since high school. I'd paid insurance, basic things I knew. But there were a lot of things like mortgage, buying a home, investments,
How to read the
401k,
contract.
what 2-cycle average daily balance for a credit card means. There was a lot of things that I didn't know. And that class, I remember like day one being like, holy cow, I'm glad I took this class.
Well, and I remember we started having kids a little bit later than many of our peers. And I remember hanging out with our little kids at the park, talking to other moms. And the moms, like, they had not started contributing to 401k.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And to me, that was like,
That's just mind-boggling to me.
but that's because you took the personal
If you're at a
finance
company that
course.
offers 401k and it's matching, like most companies will offer a 401k, they will match dollar for dollar up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 8%, depending on what your company offers. If you're not maxing that out, I don't know what you're doing.
Right. But if you are 25.
I guarantee you those scratch-off tickets that you're using to buy are not going to pay off.
But if you are
Invest in the 401k.
If you are 25 and you have the choice of bringing that extra $100 home
I understand.
or putting that extra $100 in
I'm
the 401k.
trying to motivate people. Listen, don't do that.
I 100% agree.
Invest it. The 401k is free money.
Yeah.
Do that. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. That's ridiculous.
College didn't teach you that.
But
Well, it did.
in this case, for me, because I took the class.
Right.
But I think it's an example of this true or pure learning as opposed to grade-focused learning.
Absolutely.
How many courses were you interested in that you're like, I can't take that class because I've only got so many hours in a day and I have this course load?
Right.
It's interesting. Would the college system be more attractive if you had more wiggle room? If you took, here are the 4 cores that you really need to take, which are the here are the 8 hours a day. Here's what you need to do.
Right.
8 hours is a bad example because that sounds like all day because you're not doing that every day. But you typically, like 12-hour load was a full-time student, right? What if 8 of that 12 was your core things that you needed, and then you had to have these extra ones that you got to pick your own electives?
Right. And a lot of it depends on what your degree is, because, I mean, if you are going into electrical engineering, like you graduated with, odds are pretty good you're going to have some expendable income. So to be able to teach how to use the stock market effectively, that is a good use of time.
Yeah. And I don't know that colleges need to mess with it because you can just go online and learn everything you need.
Right.
There's YouTube videos for just about everything. Now be careful. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but
Right.
you get enough sample size and watch 3 or 4 of them and you're going to learn how. Or go on Wikipedia. You're going to sort that out and you're going to learn enough basic information that paying for that information in a college doesn't make any sense.
Right. Well, okay. So the next one I would have to say would be the avoiding or resolving conflict. Because, I mean, to me, when I was in college, the person who spoke the loudest and was the tallest is the one who won the argument. Is that the way it works in the real world?
Of course not. Of course not. The person who can articulate their way out of an argument is usually the one that wins the argument, and the other person winds up going to anger management. That's usually the way it goes. Anger management's reserved for the person who loses, right? The person who gets angry
Right.
and gets their feathers ruffled, and that's the one who gets sent to training. But no, I think you're spot on that there's conflict resolution and how to avoid it, and then how to get out of it when you're in it, and how to help other people get out of it. I didn't learn any of that in college. I probably got some introduction to it because you are dealing with projects that are team-based. So you may have gotten some introduction to it, but not the way I learned it.
I would
after.
say that the social media of today probably proves that we did not learn how to resolve conflict.
I think most of our country doesn't understand how to resolve conflict. As evidence from, you can look at, you pick anybody out there has a good social media story of their own where somebody that they know is out there, or maybe it's them, posting things like, well, that's what I would expect somebody like you to say.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you always, or you never, or these paradigm language points that just cause, that trigger people, that cause people just immediately. That's just, and then we've talked about this before. I think we even had a podcast on conflict resolution. If we're not, we need to do another one. I think I did one on negative feedback that was similar. And the more you can focus on what issues, the better off you are. And you don't see that on social media. Everybody's going to who, and you always, that's what I would expect somebody like you to say or something like that.
Right. And nothing irritates people more when you're in the middle of a conflict to say, we are going to have to agree to disagree on this and walk away. And they look at you like, I am not done fussing at you yet.
Good grief. I had somebody stop me right in the middle of a conversation one time saying, wait. Are you a Democrat or Republican? Whoa. We don't know each other like that.
Right.
That's not fair discussion.
And when you're on social media,
the answer is neither of those.
And the thread keeps going and you have legit logged off and you are gone. Are you really not responding?
Right.
What?
This is what causes people to get off social media. And
I'm done, man.
I'm about there. What about organizational savvy? That's something else that I learned only after I got, like, obviously the university is not going to tell you, hey, here's how your organization is going to be structured. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not talking about that kind of organizational savvy. I'm talking about how to go collaborate and work with people outside of your realm of influence.
Right.
How to go networking. And now you could say, well, didn't you go to network events and things like that? None of that's intentional. I think that a lot of that could be a little bit more intentional. And that's something that I didn't learn until I got out.
Right. Because by the time you've been in one degree path for 3, 4, 5 years, then you have the same 20 people that are in all of your classes, right? So you're not working outside of that 20 people, outside of your comfort zone.
Which goes right to the other one, which would be navigating office politics. Navigating office politics and being organizationally savvy are one and the same thing to me. I think if you're not organizationally savvy, it's going to be really difficult. What I mean by organizationally savvy, to be clear, if you're in a company that's got multiple organizations, any mid-sized company is going to be like this. Learning and understanding what each one is motivated by, what their agenda is, what their metrics, what things drive their behavior. You need to understand those things to be able to collaborate and work with them, right? And I'd say the office politics goes right there with it, right? If you don't understand what somebody's motivated by or what their agenda is, then you're not going to be able to navigate that stuff, and then you're just going to let the wind decide where you go.
Right.
That's a rooster, in case you missed that. And then we talked about nebulous tasks. I don't know how you teach this at a university level, but if I could impart one thing for a new college grad coming straight out and they're joining some company somewhere, learn to work with ambiguity. That sounds so weird. It used to be a goofy question I would ask in interviews is, do you work well with ambiguity? And they just look at you like, this is a trick question. What does that even mean? And I would do it jokingly,
Yeah.
But it's only sort of. But you need to learn to work with nebulous tasks. The ideal employee is when I give a generic problem, go come up with a solution for this.
Right.
Go come up with something. Not, if you struggle with this, here's what it looks like. I did nothing. I don't know how many times I've had employees and I'd be like, hey, where are we on that? I haven't had a chance to touch that yet. Okay, let's talk about it next week. I'm going to give you another week on it. Come back. I haven't touched it yet. Okay, what's going on? Well, I don't know what to do next. Why didn't you say that 2 weeks ago?
Exactly right.
Right?
Exactly right.
And the reality is I don't know what next step to take. It's usually when I peel the onion with the person and have the conversation, I don't know what next step to take.
Right.
Well, I can help you with it. Go talk to that person, right?
Right.
Now you could say, well, shouldn't your manager give you that direction? Well, I like to give people nebulous tasks because if you don't work with these kind of ambiguous tasks, you don't learn how to. You don't learn how to go create some assumptions and go try to go challenge these to solve those kinds of problems. Jamie, give me a good example of what I mean by nebulous task.
If you found out that this year you're hosting Thanksgiving dinner.
That would be intimidating to people. If I said, hey, can you host Thanksgiving dinner? A lot of times I would find an employee that would be like, Yeah, because they're scared of saying no.
Right.
And then I go 2 weeks later, hey, how are we doing on that? What's the prep work? Oh, I'm still thinking about it. And I could tell, all right, this is not good.
Right.
We're not making
but
progress.
You've got to break it down. You've got to
Yeah.
break it down into how many people are coming.
Yes.
And am I doing all of the meal? Am I
Right.
dividing up the meal?
Right.
How do I make a turkey?
Exactly.
Will everyone at my family dinner eat turkey?
Breaking it down into the next task.
Yeah.
And then you go, I don't know how to make turkey. Who knows how to make turkey? Well, Aunt Ethel knows how to make turkey.
That's
Let me
right.
give her a call. Okay, your next action is to call Aunt Ethel.
Right.
Breaking things down like that to go from some ambiguous, I don't know, to a manageable task that you actually can go do something about.
Exactly right.
That's not talked about in college.
No.
That's not covered.
No.
And I'm telling you, this is a major delta for people who are really successful.
Yeah.
People that are really successful can break that down and tackle it where they're not dependent on anybody, right? Now, they work with everybody, but they don't wait. They go attack this stuff on their own.
So I had a teacher in one of my classes that the first day of school, they hand you the syllabus. And on the syllabus, it says there was going to be a huge final project. And they like laid out like one sentence, right? Your final project is going to be on everything you learned in class. They never mentioned that project throughout the entire semester. Now, halfway through the semester, you start sweating. Anybody who's paid attention to the syllabus and knows this is coming, they're like, okay, should I be working on this? Should I be doing this? What should I be doing?
It's a trap.
Did I miss something?
It's a trap.
And then you start talking amongst other people, and half the class is like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they look back at their syllabus. Oh my gosh, that was on there. Right? And then you're 2 weeks before a final. That teacher still has not mentioned this project. That
I
is
love it.
50% of your grade.
Tell me it showed up.
You get down to the last week of class, and everybody is sitting there sweating. I waited until after class, and I went up to the professor, and I said, I don't know if I missed something, but my understanding is that there is a final project. And she said, how are you doing on it? And I said, I think I'm doing well on it. I just need
like,
to make sure
haven't started.
I have some guidance. And she just busted out laughing. And she said, I put that on there every semester. She said, it's not going to count for you or against you, but I'm curious, how many people actually pay attention to the syllabus?
What a mean prank. That's a teacher prank. We should have put it in last week's
fantastic.
episode. That's evil. That's evil. You should. Now, if you'd done the project, wouldn't you be just furious?
No, the last question on the final exam was, how did your project go, and can you have it to me by next week? I wrote yes.
Did you have to turn anything in?
No!
Oh, good grief. I hate this story. This is a psychological warfare game played by a teacher. This is why I hate universities. No, I don't, actually. I have great memories of my alma mater,
Oh, yeah.
and I take my kids back there regularly, and I'm quite religious about watching college football.
Oh, yeah.
And any other sport for that matter. Our lady basketball team did pretty well. A&M's famous for... the joke is always where the men are men and the women are champions.
That's right.
Yeah, our women's athletics do very well, and our men just kind of show up and play every once in a while. Although we did win the Orange Bowl last year, so get that going for you. So what I didn't learn from college, but maybe some positive things that you did learn. Interested to hear from you guys, for folks out there. What are the regrets that you have from your university experience, of things that you wish had been covered? And then what do you think about this education process? Come on, we bantered on this quite a bit. I will tell you, we probably bantered on this about 30 minutes before we recorded, and I was tempted to just hit record and go because we were passionately getting into a debate on the education system.
I did a super good job of editing myself.
Hey, can I do one more bullet point here that I probably should have covered?
Okay.
Well, we kind of probably covered it, which is, I would say that I learned from the university, and education system in general has taught me the danger of metrics. Like, we always put metrics for things, and metrics are, this is how we're going to measure our success, and we're going to put this in place, and we're going to measure. The education system, I think, is struggling in the state of Texas because of metrics. We put these measurements that are these standardized tests. You know what a standardized test does for you? It tests your ability to take the standardized test. That's it. That's all it says. I'm a product of a poor SAT score because I was a terrible time test taker. but I would argue that I'm as good as anybody else that got better SATs than me. Certainly have had more success in the corporate world than most of them.
Yeah, definitely not a topic you want to get me started on.
For a future episode. Have a good week, folks.